Sorry, I was waiting for that. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on your location. My name is Tova Train, and I am National President of CHW, also known as Canadian Hadassah-WIZO. In honor of today, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. This program is a collaborative virtual event hosted by the Canadian Jewish Women's Collective. Proud to be a part of this initiative are CHW, Momentum Canada, Na'amat Canada, National Council of Jewish Women of Canada, National Council of Jewish Women of Canada, Toronto section, and the Women of Holy Blossom. Joining me is Robin Goldfein, the Executive Director of National Council of Jewish Women of Canada, Toronto section. Robin, please introduce us to today's incredible speaker.
Thank you, Tova. It's my honor to introduce our guest today as we mark the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and the launch of the 16-day Unite campaign. In addition, November is Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Canada, so it is particularly appropriate that NCJWC Toronto, NCJWC Canada, and our Jewish Women's Collective are participants in this important program. Thank you to Hadassah-WIZO for leading today and to members of the collective for your participation. Iris Stern-Levi is a longtime peace and feminist activist. Her professional activities include 20 years of fieldwork in the Tel Aviv Sexual Assault Crisis Center and lecturing on various feminist topics. She co-directed and founded Turning the Tables, which offers sewing skills for women leaving the cycle of prostitution. In addition, Iris was co-director of the Israeli Tribunal for Testimonies of Women Victims of Sexual Assault from 2017 to 2019. Iris is a co-founder and currently co-director of Her Academy, a vocational school for women coming out of prostitution, providing vocational skills and job placement and a better life for women seeking to exit sex work and begin anew. Deservedly, Iris is the recipient of many recognitions, some of which are as follows: the Zeusman JDC Prize, the Rapport Prize for Women for Lifetime Achievement. She is a Raya Fund honoree in recognition of her leadership, and in 2025 won the International Alliance for Women World of Difference Prize. We welcome you, Iris, and look forward to hearing you speak.
Thank you so much, Robin. I'm going to share my screen with you. Back to me. My name is Iris Stern-Levi. I'm a feminist activist field worker, and I have been so for over 5 decades. And all this started when my life stopped short one day, way back in 1993, but we'll get to that a bit further on. Until that date in 1993, I was an artist, focusing my work mainly on issues of identity, gender, and ageism. I also addressed issues on the so-called male gaze on women. I spent my days going to art galleries, museums, and gallery talks, discussing matters of perspective or color. I had a studio in the center of Tel Aviv where I spent long hours immersed in my love for creating. Painting, sculpture, you name it. Art was my passion, and it filled every minute of my day. In the early 1990s, I moved to Amsterdam, following my then partner and father of our children, who was offered a teaching position at the Amsterdam University. Having lost my studio, I found myself searching for a meaning in the streets of Amsterdam while the children were at school and my partner at work. As a feminist, I very quickly found the nearest feminist group and was happy to join in their activities. And then my life stopped short for a minute or more. I could not breathe. You see, it was in the early 90s that the news started filtering in of the plight of the Bosniak women. After the breakup of Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina declared independence. This was in 1992. The war that followed till 1995 involved Serb forces fighting the Bosniak and Muslims and the Croats. During the conflict, systematic sexual violence was used, particularly by the Serb forces, as a tool of ethnic cleansing, and it was aimed primarily at Bosniak women. It was then that I first heard of the Bosnian rape camps. I literally could not breathe. Our feminist group spent all of our energy on trying to provide help and to speak up about the gender-based atrocities being committed. Unspeakable, unheard of, unbelievable sexual violence aimed at women and young girls and teens. No one heard of these heinous acts. The world continued to spin on its axis. Life went on. People drank coffee in cafes and went to movies. I was horrified. I could not think of doing anything else, but put all my effort into helping these women so far away, and yet as women, as sisters, so close. The rape camps in Bosnia and Herzegovina during the 1992-1995 war were among the most horrific and systematic uses of sexual violence in modern history. In many of these camps, young girls, women, and in some cases men, were systematically raped, tortured, and enslaved. The goal was to terrorize, humiliate, and forcibly impregnate Bosniak women, with the deliberate aim of humiliating the Bosnian men, whose wives and sisters would carry the baby of the enemy in their womb. Can you even begin to imagine the extent of horror and sadism? Rape, sodomy, gang rape was also carried out in front of others to destroy community morale. It's hard to estimate the number of victims, but the Bosnian government estimates between 50,000 to 60,000 women, including many minors, young girls, and teens. Why is it hard to estimate? Well, you see, survivors of gender-based violence often face stigma and shame. Women do not stand up and speak out about sexual abuse, even now. Even now, after the Me Too movement rocked the world, how many of us stand up and speak out? Statistics show that 1 in every 5 women is an incest survivor. But okay, I totally understand. That number is so hard to grasp. It's a horrifying and unbelievable number. 1 out of 5 is an incest survivor. So let's say 1 out of 10, or even 1 out of 20. Do you understand what that means? It means that in practically every kindergarten, every classroom, every supermarket, wherever you are at any given time, there's a little girl who dares not speak out. There's a teenager who dares not speak out. There's a woman who till this day dares not speak out about things done to her in her past, or maybe being done to her in the present. Women, girls, we do not speak out about the abuse that they endure. Whether it's at home or at work or at school, we all keep quiet for fear of being exposed. We the victims. Well, the same goes for survivors of war crimes. Most of us have heard about the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but there is complete silence in post-war Bosnia and the world about these horrifying rape camps. Well, it affected me. I have not painted since. I have dedicated my life to speak out, to support and assist as best I can sexual assault and rape victims. In fact, all victims of gender-based violence. I cannot continue living as if nothing happened. On returning to Israel, as Robin already pointed out, I immediately became involved with the Tel Aviv Rape Crisis Center, and within a year, I managed and supervised over 200 volunteers who offer assistance on emergency hotlines, accompanying women victims of sexual violence to the police and courts, and provide knowledge and help. I did that for 20 years. But back to the present. I am honored to have been invited to talk to you, and I thank the Canadian Hadassah-WIZO team, Tova Train, Lisa Colt-Coulter, and Sharon Stern for the opportunity. The subject I've been invited to talk about being sexual violence against women during and since the 7th of October massacre. Not an easy subject to delve into when it comes to talking about one of us. So I want to start by saying that rape and sexual harm in war have been a familiar phenomena since the dawn of history, because women's bodies and sexuality have traditionally been perceived as belonging to men and identified with male dignity, and accordingly with the dignity of the nation. Rape and harm to women, because they are women, have been a central element in violent conflicts in all parts of the globe. The conquest of a woman's body through rape serves as a mean of humiliating and damaging national morale, as seen as an example in the example I've already mentioned, the impregnation of the Bosniak women with the sperm of their most hated enemy, the Serb soldier. This is a clear, symbolic expression of the ultimate humiliation and is a crushing defeat of the oppressed side. And so it has been for thousands of years. Patriarchal power structures encouraged and facilitated special harm to women's bodies in war. But back to us. The collection of testimonies from the 7th of October massacre here in Israel is a continual process, and it's currently being carried out by the Civil Archive for the documentation of crimes committed against women by Hamas. And what we do know is that at 6:29 a.m. on the 7th of October, our world turned upside down. Air raid sirens wailed continually throughout the country as thousands of rockets were launched from Gaza, and we watched in horror as hundreds of Hamas fighters tore down the fences, broke barriers, and swarmed into towns, kibbutzim, and army bases. We were exposed to minute-by-minute live coverage of brutality and carnage, and the whole nation sat helplessly opposite TV screens waiting, praying for someone to stop the nightmare. But help did not come till the evening, and we all know the outcome. More than 1,200 mostly civilians died on the 7th of October. 251 people, both alive and dead, were abducted that day by Hamas. Most of the abductees were civilians, including women, men, the elderly, and children. The attack was planned and carried out to intensify the shock and humiliation of unaware Israeli citizens. During the attack, the terrorists committed war crimes and crimes against humanity, such as mass murder, torture, and kidnapping of civilians and soldiers. According to the testimonies, gender-based violence, including rape, gang rape, mutilation, and intentional mutilation of the victim's genitals, horrifying testimonies. I really do not have to go into the details. The vast majority of women and girls who were abused did not live to communicate what had happened to them. However, their naked and mutilated corpses found in houses, fields, and abandoned cars and roads, together with the testimony gathered from eyewitnesses, first responders, and relevant experts, provide undeniable proof of Hamas's systematic use of sexual violence and torture in the most extreme and unimaginable way. Those who witnessed and were exposed to acts of rape, gang rape, and sexual abuse were subsequently severely affected until this day, 2 years and more later, experienced post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This does not simply go away. Unfortunately, it will be a continual part of their life. Due to this, their mental state does not allow them to recount the evidence that they have witnessed, much less the surviving victims themselves. Hamas terrorists sexually assaulted and raped not only women and young girls, but also children and men were harmed. Rape in wartime often appears with practices of sadism, xenophobia, the fear and hatred of people perceived as foreign or different to us, and misogyny. Rape in wartime is characterized by dehumanization. The woman bleeding in front of the abuser is not a person, but a symbolic body to which hatred and violence are transferred. Brutality is also expressed in the physical injuries that accompany the sexual assault. These atrocities were intended to be utilized as a psychological weapon. We were all, and we still are, in a state of shock. The objectification and horrific brutality towards both living and deceased victims are a brazen violation of human dignity. We hear testimonies of gang rape, violent abuse to both living and dead, and what's even more devastating, the terrorists committed these brutal acts in front of spouses, children, family or friends of their victims, in a manner designed to increase the pain, helplessness, and anguish of all present. Does that sound familiar? They didn't invent this. I can speak of prominent examples from around the world, such as the women of the Yazidi community in Iraq, who experienced unheard of and brutal atrocities committed by ISIS. Central to this was gender-based and sexual violence with explicit targeting of girls and women. Sex slavery, rape, torture, and forced marriage were used by ISIS as a tool to humiliate indigenous people. Some of you will also remember the sexual violence towards individuals detained at the US military prison of Abu Ghraib during the early stages of the Iraqi war in 2004, when members of the United States Army and the CIA physically and sexually abused detainees, including rape, torture, and the public desecration of their bodies. These and many more incidents were cited by the UN Secretary General in a report on conflict-related sexual crimes against women, girls, and other victims of abduction and human trafficking. But back to Israel and the 7th of October. The amazing thing is, or maybe not, quite shockingly for us, the overall response to this sea of evidence of rape and horrifying sexual torture has primarily been silence at best, outright denial, or even justification at worst. For example, following the atrocities committed against Israeli women by Hamas on October the 7th, women's organizations of the world stayed silent. UN Women stayed silent too, and it was only 8 days after the events that they issued what many called a generic statement, recognizing gender-based violence and sexual assault perpetrated on Israeli women. We were all in shock. You see, condemning these heinous acts is not taking a side in the conflict. Rather, it's standing up for women everywhere. This is not about Israel versus Palestinians. It's about empathy versus contempt and decency versus evil. This is another reason for the denial that we are experiencing. There is another reason for the denial that we are experiencing. Denial is a common response to unheard of atrocities. Denial, repression, and dissociation operate on a social as well as in an individual level. Those who attempt to describe the atrocities that they have witnessed also feel that they are at risk for their credibility. I mean, how can you imagine these things? To speak publicly about one's knowledge of sexually incited atrocities is to invite the stigma that is attached to the victims. Sexual violence in conflict is about the destruction and dehumanization of a community. It must never be ignored. It must never be minimalized or contextualized. Rape denial and victim blaming in particular, when based on nationality or religion, should never happen. But before I go on with thoughts of what should be done, I do want to address the subject of the silence that we all take part in. First and foremost of our silence, our own private silence about our very own experiences. We girls and women who have been sexually abused, we do not speak up. Instead of the perpetrator feeling shame for his actions, he who assaulted us, we are the ones who feel the shame, as if we wanted to be touched, as if we asked to be raped. We do not share or speak out about our abuse. We know how to live our life without anyone noticing our pain. In continual fear of exposure, we are the ones who take the burden of shame upon our shoulders. Now, if you can identify with this, then you can understand the women who were sexually abused on the 7th of October and survived, and their silence, and their reluctance to speak up, recount, and relive the atrocities they endured. The world, the country, we all want to hear and understand what happened, yet they cannot give testimony or relive the pain. Therefore, we have very little documentation of the rape crimes from the victims themselves. Another aspect of silence that we should address would be apathy, or maybe what we perceive as the refusal of others to validate what we have endured as a nation. If sexual assault occurs within the family or by a family friend, we find that there is always an element of disbelief, and eventually things are hushed and kept secret. The consequences of secrecy can lead to the isolation and shame of the victims, not the perpetrators. And so, in the days after the 7th of October, we discovered that the United Nations body dedicated to gender equality, the UN Women, failed to specifically condemn Hamas for sexual crimes against Israeli citizens. As shocking and unacceptable as this may be, I do want to mention here that we all are to blame when it comes to condemning or publicly express alarm at horrific acts of violence when it comes to someone other than us. Of course, we as Jewish women, we are shocked to our core to hear the terrible testimonies of rape and gender-based violence against Israeli girls and women. But think about it. Do we speak out about the hundreds and thousands of young girls and women being raped till this day in the Democratic Republic of Congo? Hundreds and thousands. The United Nations calls the Congo as being the rape capital of the world. Do we speak out about the thousands of girls and women being raped and murdered as I talk in Darfur, Sudan? And all of this is part of an ethnic cleansing. Are we as shocked to our core as we are when we hear of the abuse that the Israeli women endured? So can we understand that the world behaves in the same way, in denial and silence? What's more, I have not heard the Jewish community speak out against or condemn sexual assault, forced nudity, and rape of Palestinian detainees by the IDF security forces. Testimonies that have been recently revealed, including sexual assault, forced stripping, and in some cases, alleged rape and rape using batons and knives to penetrate their victims. We are not innocent when it comes to war crimes. A report by the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestine Territory of March 2025, found that Israel's security forces used forced public stripping and other forms of sexual and gender-based violence as part of their procedures. For example, the report noted that instances where women and girls were dragged to camera-free location and subject to sexualized assault. Now, the United Nations Women stated that every act of violence against women and girls, including sexual violence, is unequivocally condemned, irrespective of the nationality, identity, race, or religion of the victims. And they did finally condemn the horrific acts of Hamas on October 7th. They also noted that Gaza was under devastating, relentless bombardment, killing thousands of whom an estimated 67% were women and children. I think that is what upset most Israelis in the Jewish community. But as a society, we must first and foremost acknowledge and condemn all forms of violence, not just that which is directed at us. We must raise our voices and prove, first and foremost to ourselves and to the world, that we shun and vehemently reject torture and abuse of any person. Otherwise, how can we expect the world to acknowledge or to be sympathetic to what has been done to us? What should we do? As a society, we must be able to identify and acknowledge the sexual and gender-based violence perpetrated on our sisters on October 7th, 2023. We must break the cycle of silence, sustaining shame, and we must foster an adequate space and conditions to support the healing of survivors. Victims who need assistance and recovery from the injuries that they've suffered often struggle to receive the care and assistance that they need because their environment is busy healing and surviving the effects of war themselves, as are we here in Israel. And I want you to remember that we all have some kind of image of what a woman who has survived sexual violence looks like. And if she does not fit that image, then we lose interest very quickly. And this is what happened when some of the young women returned after over 100 days in captivity, waving their hands and smiling. They did not fit the image we have of rape victims. They were not thin, they were not underfed, they did not hide in the shadows. So eventually, and it didn't take the Israeli public very long, we were witness to questions arising within the community as to whether they were abused at all. As I've already mentioned, we women and young girls, we know very well how to hide any signs of sexual violence that we experience. Sometimes we ourselves even question if what we are experiencing or have experienced in the past is sexual violence at all. I can say with confidence, with over 40 years of experience in work with victims of GBV, gender-based violence, that unambiguously, if there is any doubt, then there is no doubt. If you have that queasy feeling that something is wrong, that something wrong is happening, then you must trust yourself. The effects of sexual violence is lifelong. Girls and women who have been sexually abused experience PTSD. If it's ongoing, it's usually CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This becomes an inherent part of our lives. Living with generalized anxiety, insomnia, flashbacks, and depression. Other possible consequences include the loss of self-esteem, despair, and self-loathing. But we learn to live with it. It becomes a way of life. We learn to live with the pain, and we know how to hide it. We can talk about anything, everything but our own abuse. And as a community, we must remember that. That is what should be in our minds, first and foremost. And recovery for victims has to be done with that in mind. That is very hard to talk about our own abuse. Financial resources should go to fund specialized support services for survivors of gender-based violence. And there should be specific post-trauma informed training for medical, nursing, and paramedical care providers. Investigative personnel must be routinely trained in explicit, precise, and sensitive GBV training. They must learn the best practices for interviewing survivors and witnesses of gender-based violence and sexual violence. Finally, all relevant institutions must prepare to address an expected rise in violence within the community, particularly that which is called intimate partner violence, IPV, domestic violence, a phenomenon which is less talked about, one that comes as a ripple effect, an aftermath to every war. War brings upon a normalization of violence and gender-based violence in particular. Exposure to widespread violence can normalize coercion and aggressive conflict resolution. We see it here in Israel on the roads every day. Road rage is rampant here. During and after war, there is always an increase of violence within the household. In some settings, wartime sexual violence and domestic sexual violence interact. Multiple systematic reviews and studies find that living through armed conflict is linked to an increase in household violence. Especially once the fighting stops, it is common, but it is less visible. Why? I've already said it. We women keep shut about our abusive husbands and partners. We suffer in silence. We must acknowledge the heroism of women who are going through this horror. We must fight for the rights for those who are struggling to find a way to survive, and we must never, never give up on anyone. What can we do? The answer is simple. We must always speak out and spread our knowledge. When we choose silence or selectivity, we become part of the same cycle that sustains harm. True commitment to peace and justice means standing against every act of brutality, no matter who commits it or who suffers from it. As women, mothers, sisters, daughters, we must have the courage to identify and condemn all forms of violence, not only the violence directed at us. We should stand firm, irrespective of the nationality, identity, race, or religion of the victims. This is how I live my life, and subsequently, this is how I find myself actively advocating and working for all GBV victims. Today, I head an organization that I founded over 16 years ago, together with Tal Hamawi, Her Academy, a vocational school for women coming out of prostitution. Heroic women who have undergone hell and back and are struggling to find their place in a society that criticizes them and not the men who pay to penetrate their bodies. But that is a completely different story for a completely different time. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you so much for listening so patiently, and I hope I can get out of this and get back to you. Thank you.
Iris, thank you so much for joining us today. I know how busy you are, and it's obviously after 7:30 at night in Israel. So we are very, very grateful for your time tonight, and thank you for providing the additional insights into this very important topic. My social media today is flooded with stories of violence, sexual violence against women, and in particular of former hostages that are coming forward to talk about their stories. So it's a particularly difficult day and sad day to see what's transpiring on social media. I want to suggest to anyone who's watching live right now, if you have a question for Iris, to please put it in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to share it. But I thought maybe we could just start off by talking about something hopeful. Do you see any signs of progress that, after 40 years, that gives you any feeling of hope that real change is possible? I think we all need to feel a little bit of hope.
That's an amazing question. People always say to me, how do you stay so happy and optimistic after working so many years with gender-based violence, sexually abused women, with women in prostitution? I think that my optimism comes from the fact that women who phone the rape crisis centers are women who speak up about their own experiences. They don't keep it in, they speak up. And women who come and study here at her academy are women who say, I want to leave prostitution and I want to do something with my life. And I think that for every woman who comes up and says, look, I want to change what's happened to me, I understand what's happened to me, and I want to move on and move up, then for me, that's a success. One woman is a success. So the more we speak out, the more we'll change, hopefully. I mean, we still live in a patriarchy, but if we do learn to speak out, and look, it's really hard. I mean, I know that we say sisters are doing it for themselves, and we should work together, etc. But we all have our own private problems, and we all come from different backgrounds, and we all have our own views on other people with other women, and we have to learn to listen and to understand.
Women are exploited. They're easily exploitable, simply, I guess, by virtue of the fact that, often we're physically smaller than men, and we're more intimidated, maybe. I don't know. But even speaking out, even raising our voices, even demanding that the UN speaks out, or, lack thereof, can that truly change the exploitation of women for the future? Can that really, like, how, as a woman, can we stand up for ourselves in situations of war, in situations of just everyday, violence against women? Like, is that even possible, Iris?
Okay, look, you invited me. I'm a controversial speaker, and
That's okay.
you might not all like what I have to say,
That's okay.
but look, we all grow up to be good little girls. The minute we come out of our mother's womb, we're immediately we have little bows put in our hair and earrings put in our ears, and the minute we come out, we have to be made prettier. Our brothers come out and they're perfect as they are. They don't have to pierce their ears, they don't have to put the ribbons in there. But the minute we come out, we're under the male gaze, even if we're 1 day old. And we brought up like that. We brought up, I mean, look, I'm blonde, I don't have hair on my hands or whatever, but the minute that I turned 13, 14, in Australia, we all started shaving ourselves because we're supposed to be hairless. We're supposed to look like young little girls. The stories that we brought up on, I mean, I can't blame us. We were all brought up on Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. And Sleeping Beauty and Snow White were kissed by a stranger, a complete stranger, the prince. Yeah, they were unconscious. We brought up on this.
Yes.
Brought up with a
Yes. I would say Disney's one of the the worst when you actually
look,
watch these films now.
And Ariel, the Little Mermaid, who had an amazing voice that she could say, "Hey, don't touch me, don't do this." She gave her voice to the witch, who's an old, fat old lady, yeah. And instead of that, what did she get? She got a pair of legs, and what was between the pair of legs, because that's all that really matters. She lost her voice. She couldn't say, "I like being touched like this. I don't like being touched like this," but it doesn't matter. And we brought up, these are what we brought up on. This is the messages that we get as little girls and as young women. And then we go shopping as teenagers and there are all these short shirts and tight trousers. But then when we wear them, we're told that we're being provocative. It's a double, like we're stuck in this world where we're told to be good and not express any sexuality at all. I mean, these hostages, the women hostages, and now also the men hostages that have started talking up about their sexual abuse have been shut up, The women
Sorry, when you say they've been shut up, who is silencing them?
The public, like I can't remember his name. One of the very last that came out. He just went off Facebook because he was being abused for speaking up about what he'd experienced.
Oh my goodness, I did not know.
Everyone wants to know that you've been raped. Nobody wants to continually hear the story. Okay. Wow. And these young women who spent 100 days in Gaza, in tunnels or not, and while they were there were stories of them being pregnant and the minute they came out and they all looked very robust and well-fed, the public lost complete interest, and then they were paraded around and they made V signs and smiled and took selfies with people, and nobody is interested in them anymore. Okay, but they're suffering. And any woman, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be penetrated. Just being looked at or touched or stroked, I mean, I think we can all remember these little incidents that we've had as a child, maybe with some neighbor or whatever, and we can still remember them. Like I remember, some boy at school touching me and I'm 72 years old. So think about someone who's been raped,
Yeah.
But we taught not to talk out about these things.
There's accusations that swirl around, and this might be a difficult question to answer. It's a sensitive question. There's accusations swirling around that although the IDF is the most moral army in modern warfare, that the IDF has committed some inappropriate acts. Is there anything being done to address those issues that you're aware of?
Okay.
And they may be all rumors. I don't know the accuracy of that. And
it's coming out now. And the government is trying to really press it down. But for years, I was in the board of a group called Coalition of Women for Peace. It was an Israeli-Palestinian organization, and we were getting reports of women going through the borders, that they had to cross the borders from East Jerusalem to Jerusalem, from Jordan to Israel and back, or whatever, being sexually abused all the time. And these were shushed and hushed, and the government does not talk up. But now there are many incidents that are coming up. It's like You can't keep the shit down, as they say, and it's being investigated, even though there's a big outcry in Israel not to investigate.
Wow. Wow. That's
But
difficult.
yes, but men use our bodies to humiliate not just us, but our men.
What would you say, just from a policy standpoint, what would be what policy changes could have the most immediate impact to reduce violence against women? If you could comment on that.
Well, you'd have to change the government. You'd have to change the government. Look, only 9% of our government are women. And you'd have to put in women who are not who are able to speak out. There should be funding, much more funding for IPV, for intimate partner violence. Not talked about, and especially not talked about the aftermath after war. And testimonies are coming in now of women being abused by their partners who've come back from the war. Plus, since January 2025, 40 women have been murdered in Israel. Okay, and men murder men because they steal, or they want to, or they fight them, or whatever. But women are murdered by their partners, by their husbands, by their partners, by their fathers, by their brothers, because they did not do what they were expected to do, or whatever, or they were, I don't know. I mean, the way to make us comply is to kill us. Is to kill us.
How can social institutions like schools and workplaces, healthcare, play a role in preventing violence before it even starts?
Speaking out. And you know what? We all teach our daughters to take care of themselves. We say, don't go down that street. Don't go out in the dark. Don't go out alone. Don't go out with a girlfriend. Don't do this. Don't do that. We do not teach our sons. We do not say to our sons, do not touch girls. Do not touch women. Do not. We don't teach them that. We are taught to protect our glasses so that nobody puts in a rape drug. We're taught to look out for our glasses when we go to the pubs.
Right.
Yeah. But we don't tell the men, do not put rape drugs into our glasses. It's all on our shoulders. We have to protect ourselves all the time. We are the ones who have to continually think about who is behind us, who is in front of us, who is walking on the street. Are we alone? We all go out and we're aware that we have to look out for ourselves, and as well in the house as well. Yeah. Because we have, if 1 out of 5 is an incest survivor, that means that most of the sexual abuse is done in our own homes.
So how can we involve men and boys more in making meaningful prevention?
Education.
Just
education. The sex education shouldn't be for us about our sexual reproductive organs, etc. It should be for young boys, and they should learn not to touch or not to touch the young girls. It should start from the kindergarten. Yeah. And we have to learn that we can run like a boy, we can climb like a boy, we can shout like a boy, and not be told all the time, don't climb, you're going to dirty your dress, don't do this, don't do that. We're continually being told what not to do. And I think there's an advertisement for Dove, I think, where they ask young girls to run like a girl, and they run. Yeah. But when we're women, everyone knows Phoebe and Friends, we flip our hands. because we learned that we have to be petite and sweet and
Fragile.
fragile.
Yeah.
And you know, I might be small, but I'm not. It doesn't matter. I don't have to be I don't have to have the same physique as a man to be equal to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of the advocacy around gender-based violence, it's often led by women. How do we encourage men to stand up and be advocates to use their voices?
Yeah. Look, all these marches that we have for the International Day of
Mm-hmm.
Violence Against Women, it's
Mm-hmm.
women marching.
Yes.
Why are our partners, our husbands, our brothers, our fathers, why are they not marching with us? You know, no, they're not expected to march because this is our issue. We have to change, and they have to understand that this is their issue too. Like, I mean, women in prostitution, yeah, they have fathers, they have brothers, they have sons.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that go to them, the men that go to them, they have daughters and sisters and mothers and wives. Nobody thinks about these things. I mean, how many of us have got a friend who's in prostitution? Even if we did, we wouldn't know. She wouldn't speak out because of the
Right.
stigma. Yeah. And I'm telling you, and Tova and Lisa know this because they've been here. The women that we come to study here at her academy, they look like you and me.
Yeah.
They don't look like these images that the media puts up of like women in tiered stockings, in fish net stockings and short skirts and bleached hair. They look like you and me. They're women. They're women who at some stage something happened and they're inside prostitution. But they have fathers and brothers and and sons, you know.
Right. I want to leave a couple of minutes just for some closing remarks, but I'm going to ask one last question. If you could leave everyone with one mindset shift, if you could inspire us with one change, what would it be?
That we have to, first of all, stand with our sisters. I mean, it sounds like corny, but we have to stand with our sisters. They don't look like us when they don't look like what we imagine they should look like. And we have to understand that. We have to understand that. And they're with us at our workplace. And we might think, you know, oh, they're spoiled or whatever, but they're with us. They're all around. We have to understand that. And the blame should never be on a woman, because even if we go to his house, even if we smile at him or we want to be cuddled, we do not want to be raped. We do not want to be abused. And it's okay to smile, and it's okay to go to their house to have a cup of to have a vodka. But it doesn't mean that I want to be raped.
Fair enough.
So stand
No
up
one
for your
does.
sisters.
But believe first, ask questions after, but believe first. There should be a default
They
always.
never, she, she will never look like what we expect her to look like.
Yeah.
And she's with us all the time. 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5. It's a terrible number. And that's
Wow.
in the household.
And that's in Israel. Those are statistics.
No. That's the worldwide.
Global.
But it's global. I mean, the men are all over. So they're doing it in America. They're doing it in Israel.
Iris Stern-Levy, I want to thank you so much for speaking today, for your time and for your insight, and for the advocacy work that you're doing, and the wonderful place that her academy is to help change women's lives and give them a fresh start and a better start. So CHW is a proud supporter of the Her Academy, and thank you for helping to make a difference in the world.
Thank
I
you, Lisa.
Our pleasure. And on behalf of the Jewish Women's Collective, we thank you for joining us today. To everyone who's listening, just a reminder that we have another presentation on Sunday, December 7th from 10 until 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It's a hybrid presentation. In person, it takes place at Holy Blossom Temple, or over Zoom. There's a light breakfast it's up at 9:30 for those who are in person. And the presentation title is Still Seeking Justice for Victims of Sexual Violence on October 7th. This is part of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, and a second program that is collectively co-sponsored by the Jewish Women's Collective, and was conceived by the Women of Holy Blossom. I also wanted to remind those that are listening that CHW has launched into a campaign today. If you're interested in supporting our end of year campaign, our Giving Tuesday is effectively kicked off, and all donations received for our education programs are being quadrupled until midnight on December 2nd. So any gifts will be 4 times bigger. Iris, thank you again so much for your participation and the participation of all those involved in the Jewish Women's Collective. Thank you everyone for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.